Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another INART 1/6 scale figure unboxing and review. Today we're taking a look at the all-in version of the Batman, which consists of Vengeance, Bruce Wayne, as well as the Bat Signal. Now I'm pretty sure the number one question on literally everyone's mind, including my own, is this the definitive Robert Pattinson Batman in 6 scale, or does that go to the Hot Toys one? I hope to have a proper answer to that question by the end of the video. If you are heading down to the description, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button, so you're notified as soon as a brand new INART figure review goes live on the channel. So I thought we'd start off with the Bat Signal, then we'll move on to Bruce Wayne, and we'll finish up with the Batman, because all three pieces come individually packaged in their own boxes, which makes your life a hell of a lot easier if you're planning on parting this out. For the Bat Signal, there's no clear acrylic layer over the top. We'll talk about that when we get to the figure boxes, but we do have a silhouetted image of the Bat Signal front and center, and a The Batman movie logo. Whereas down below, I think this is like Riddler's mad scribblings. It says, "I know what I must become." On the side of the box, another Batman movie logo. And I like that for the red, they've added all of this speckling to give it this real grungy, dirty feel. Around the back, we have a quote from the opening of the film, a little Batman symbol, and the "I know what I must become" Riddler text does continue around the back of the box as well. I am curious to find out which is the better Bat Signal, because the Hot Toys one is already brilliant. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Oh, I see what's going on here. For those of you who don't know, INART and Queen Studios, who is a statue company, they're the same thing. So that's why the Bat Signal is in some very statue-style packaging. And I'm here for it. This means that for shipment, it's going to be bulletproof. The foam is super thick, and it's held in place with Velcro strapping with an INART logo printed on it. We do have a literature packet tucked underneath the Velcro strap, so do make sure you go through this before you try and assemble your Bat Signal. Luckily, it looks like there is minimal assembly required. We just have these three little pieces on the side of the foam block. Still, read the instructions. First, in-hand impressions for the Bat Signal. I reckon it looks great. It's sizable, it's hefty, and I am loving the weathering. With all of that being said, I reckon it's time we move on to Bruce Wayne. You're probably noticing some similarities between the layout of Bruce Wayne's artwork on the cardboard portion of the box at least, and the Bat Signal. That's because it's kind of identical. We've got the "I know what I must become" down below, the Batman logo through the middle, and a silhouetted image of Bruce Wayne's head sculpt this time. But they have added this clear acrylic sheet that wraps all the way around the box. It serves to add some depth, and it's got a really neat effect around the back. You do have to be a bit more careful with it, because it is just translucent plastic. This gets scratched up very easily. This is kinda neat. Even though, yes, it's completely unnecessary, I'm still so here for it. We still have the "I am the shadows" in the middle, the Batman symbol, and the text down below. If you slide out the inner box, as you can see, because there are a bunch of horizontal lines across the clear plastic acrylic, it makes it look like the bats are flapping their wings. Not something that has any practical use, it's just a neat effect. In order to get to the figure and the box inside, you will have to remove the inner cardboard box from the clear plastic shell. What we're left with is the satin finish artwork underneath. The shared design philosophy between the three boxes means that even though everything is packaged separately, it still feels like one cohesive set. The top cover is held in place with magnets, and underneath it, we're greeted by another literature packet. Do once again make sure you're reading the instructions, because if you went for the rooted hair version like I did, some assembly is going to be required. INART packages their rooted hair head sculpts separately in those little containers so that in transit, nothing happens to the hairstyle. It doesn't get messed up because it is pre-styled from the factory. First in-hand impressions for a headless Bruce Wayne. So far so good. He feels surprisingly heavy, and the tailoring is very sharp. Let's move on to the main event though, Batman himself. I don't think we need to go over the entire box for Vengeance, seeing as though it's the same as Bruce Wayne. It's just thicker, and this time we have an image of Batman wearing the cowl around the front. I will take the time to show you the moving bats around the back again though. When you slide the inner box out, as you can see, the little bats flap their wings. Yes, it's a gimmick. Don't forget, someone had to sit down and prototype that and test it and make sure it works before they shipped out these boxes. So the R&D on getting that right was probably non-trivial, for an effect that you're only really gonna see once. Details matter, and for INART, spending time and money on getting something as silly as that to work, I think that goes to show how important these figures are to them. They want to make sure that every little detail is on point. So the construction for the box is the same as Bruce Wayne. We've got the top cover held in place with magnets, and underneath it, another literature packet. So we have 3 sets of instructions in total. They are going to be pretty important for Batman specifically, because he comes packaged without his belt on, without his cape on, and without his head sculpt on. So much more assembly required with Batsy as compared to Bruce Wayne. First in-hand impressions for him? Once again, I'm taken aback by how heavy he is. This thing feels very premium. What we are going to do now, though, is get all of the accessories for Bruce Wayne and Batman out here, and take a closer look at everything they come with. For the sake of simplicity, I've placed all of Bruce Wayne's accessories on the left, and all of Batman's on the right. Batman is clearly the more stacked of the 2 releases. And as for the bat signal, let's look at the smaller stuff first, and we'll move on to it after. Starting off with Bruce Wayne's display base, it's nice and compact and low profile. It's meant to just be a rectangular style rockwork display base. We've got some cracks and some texture up on top with washers in the crevices, and around the front, a W. That's for Wayne, but also it's the design of the cufflinks that were given to Alfred by Thomas Wayne, and then Alfred gave them to Bruce. Now, this is still a magnetic style display base, but it works a little bit differently compared to all of the previous INART releases. They've actually implemented some of the feedback I gave them when I interviewed Viper in China. Instead of having those teeny tiny little magnets in the middle, I suggested a rail mechanism so that you can adjust them pose depending, and the same goes for Batman as well. So if you want Bruce Wayne standing at the front of the display base, doable. Or if you want him standing in the middle with a wide stance, also doable. And you're going to get the full power of the magnets rather than just hoping your figure is not going to fall off the display base. In the future, I would still like to see stronger and bigger magnets, but for now, I reckon this is a pretty good start. Once you're happy with the magnet position, hop the base plate back on and lock it in place. Bruce does come with 4 protester signs, not for him, they're more so meant as set dressing just to pop around the display base, some world building, if you will. To facilitate that, they each come with their own stands that you have to assemble, so 4 stands in total. It's quite straightforward, a little bit of origami, then they're adhesive backed, you stick them onto the surface of the signs around the back. The first one says lies, lies, lies. Someone's going to probably say that in the comments section, honestly, about this review if they prefer the Hot Toys Batman. We have a Riddler question mark in red, one in yellow, and one that says Our Day of Judgment. This one might just be my favorite. I like how the letters are dripping down and it's got this wood grain effect over the top. They are all printed on acrylic, so you will have to remove this sticky sheet on the back and then you can attach the stands. Or you can just leave it on like I did. That way it looks more like a cardboard sign rather than a printed out acrylic placard. Now you do get all of the Riddler cards from the movie and every single one of them has its own envelope. I'm only going to open this one from the start of the film just because I think it's a bit more fun to experience these in person yourself. So you do have the cipher and the riddle. What does a liar do when he's dead? He lies still. Oh, the car key is a nice touch. I mean, what else do you give Bruce Wayne? Really, if I was making a Bruce Wayne, I'd be stumped too, so a car key makes perfect sense. The key tag is done in black plastic, the loop is real metal, whereas the key, once again plastic. And because they are 3 separate pieces, when you have him holding this, it does genuinely look like a real dangling key in 1/6 scale. Ah, yes, a very Bruce Wayne accessory. We get a stack of multiple $100 bills. They are printed on both sides, and you do get a few of them, just in case they get creased or you happen to lose them. If they did get creased, I reckon that would add to the look. Gotham City doesn't strike me as a town that would have perfect, pristine bills like this. And lastly, for Bruce at least, a full array of hands, including these very natural looking gripping hands. That little pinky sticking out, love that. There's some sculpt work for the nails, veins painted on, and even a little scratch on his knuckle. We then get two more gripping hands, this one slightly more open than the other, and then one more for the right side. It's the same gesture that we just looked at for the left. I'm also just now noticing that there's some cuticle detail painted in. Oh, and he does have two open palm hands already installed on him out of the box. Okay, so let's move on to Batman's accessories, starting off with his display base. The Bat Signal design works for me. It's essentially a pancake version of the Bat Signal that he's supposed to stand on. Around the front, it says Batman, and there's even a logo inset inside the lettering. We have another logo up on top with some blue shading through the middle, tons of silver dry brushing, and it's got the same moving magnetic track system. So you can open it up, move the magnets around, and then you can pop Batman on the display base. He'll be secure without having to have an ugly crotch grabber or flagpole. That's the idea, at least. As long as you get the feet nice and flat on the base, you're going to be perfectly fine. So I opted for the rooted hair version of Batman and Bruce Wayne, and this is how the head sculpt comes packaged. There is a clear piece that goes over the top. You'll see what I mean a little bit later. We will discuss all of the head sculpts, how they pop on the body, when we get the figures themselves out here. To go along with the uncowled head sculpt, we do get an empty cowl for him to hold. And the detail on this thing is absolutely immaculate. The scratching, the super HD leather grain texture, the stitching. I cannot get enough of how good this thing looks. He does come with 3 magnetic mouth plates in total, one neutral one mid-sentence one, and one that's a hell of a lot angrier. We will try out all 3, of course. I still don't get the sticky bomb gun. He never uses it in the movie, yet he should of course come with it because it's always in his holster. The INART version of the sticky bomb gun has real metal rails on the outside, some black speckling on the silver parts, and you can remove the canister just like the Hot Toys one. But you get an additional extra canister, in case you lose one or you want to make it look like he's reloading. I specifically remember complaining about the Hot Toys handcuffs not being functional. The INART ones can open and close, they can fold, and they're made of die-cast metal. These things are genuinely really heavy. Speaking of die-cast, this little grappling hook, this one, the rod and the connector, all of this is real metal. Maybe not 100% necessary, but I don't care. The more real metal accessories I can get, the better. Oh, and we do get 2 of each, 2 of the longer ones and 2 of just the hooks. For the tactical bat knife, we get 3 in total. One that's straight up and down in knife mode, the other that's in bat symbol shape mode, and the third one is pre-installed in his chest plate out of the box. All 3 of them are made of die-cast. They have some real scratches on the surface. That is not silver paint. When you run your finger across it, you can feel those indentations. They've also done something that I've never seen before. So this is just a generic piece of paper, and as you can see, the knife is sharp enough to cut through it. It's not super sharp, you're not going to cut yourself. Still, don't put too much pressure on the blade. Do be careful. So he does have the collapsed versions of the grappling guns pre-installed on him out of the box, and you get the extended ones that you can swap out onto his gauntlets. 2 of the adrenaline shots, there are already 2 more in the pouches on his belt, so I guess that makes it 4 in total, even though those ones aren't removable. This is the same thing, right? It's the flare. This is the extended one, and this is the shorter one. We've got a wash over the top, bright yellow up top, and you can store both of these on his belt. So I reckon we have 2 contenders for the Best Accessory Award this time. The first one is the Bat Laptop. He does have a Bat logo up on top, so his branding is on point. You can rotate the antenna for maximum Wi-Fi, and it opens and closes. There's some speckling of dirt and grime inside. You've got a full keyboard, some printed buttons, and a fully printed glossy screen with the conversation he had with the Riddler. So this is the second contender. It seems rather unassuming at first. There's some silver dry brushing, yeah, there's a working clip and some texture for the button, but that's not why I love this thing. If you take it apart, there's a little piece on the inside that you can push and you can activate. So I'm pretty sure you can see where this is going. It's a real working flashlight in 1/6 scale. I've never seen this before, and I hope going forward, if future INART figures have little pieces that are meant to light up like this, they do. I don't know how more people aren't raving about that working flashlight. For figure photography, you're going to be able to do everything in lens. You're not going to have to do photoshopping to get the light to look like it's turned on. It'll cast genuine light on Batman, and it'll make your job so much easier. So Batman also comes with the exact same array of cards and envelopes as Bruce Wayne. And lastly, a full array of hands for Batman. You've got the big knuckles around the back, his bat Apple Watch on the left side, and some detail sculpted in for the palm. There's this sandy coloured wash in the crevices to make them look dusty, and they're all done in a matte finish except for the knuckles. So those were the grappling gun hands. He does come with 2 closed fists, a sticky bomb gun holding hand for the right, and a relaxed semi-open palm hand for the right as well. A fully open palm hand for the right, and a gripping hand that's meant to be used for either the flare or the torch. I always forget, I know a lot of people get pissed when I call it a torch, that's just what we call it in Australia. You'll call it a flashlight, I understand. He does come with 2 open palm hands already installed on him out of the box. I think it's time we move on to the bat signal. We will of course do our comparisons back to the Hot Toys bat signal, but before we do, let's discuss the INART one on its own first. You do have to install these feet, by the way, there's 3 of them in total, and it's very straightforward. You push them on, they clip in place, and they're not going anywhere. If you decided, yeah, I'm just gonna skip the instructions, I'll watch Justin's video, he'll show me where to install the batteries. Luckily, this time that's indeed the case. You can rotate the back part off, and that's where you install the batteries. So they decided to go single cell batteries rather than USB-C. I see the benefits with both options because a lot of people have left their USB-C connected Hot Toys bat signal fully powered on all the time. And while you can do that with USB-C, the LED around the front doesn't last forever, and people are starting to burn out their LEDs. Whereas with single cell batteries, they're probably going to die a lot quicker than the LED itself. The best way I can describe the finish on this thing is it kind of sort of looks like if you touch it, you're going to get tetanus. And that's perfect. That's exactly what I want from a old school floodlight that's been turned into a bat signal. It's been left out in the elements, it rains all the time in Gotham, and therefore now it looks rusty and nasty. That's not to say it doesn't look metallic at the same time. It does. There's this silver dry brushing and some chipping here and there to remind you that this thing is supposed to be made of metal. If the rust didn't already do it for you. They've applied it almost as a wash, so it looks like it's been dripping down and collecting in the crevices. That, for me, is the best way to do a rust wash because that conveys that this thing has been left out in the rain. If they just selectively dabbed on some rust here and there, I don't think it would have worked quite as well as this finish does. Just like the Hot Toys one, it does have some articulation, if that's what we want to call it. There are ratchet joints in these arms, so when you rotate the bat signal up, it can stop at multiple different stages. It can rotate all the way back if you so choose. But the default resting position has the front of the bat signal where it's contoured, sitting on top of this bar. So for me, I'm just going to do what it wants me to do, and I'm going to have it sitting all the way down, facing forward. It's very interesting to see 2 different companies' approaches to making essentially the same light. Hot Toys have made it so that this piece can move, whereas on the INART one, it can't. That's not to say this light doesn't have its own party piece, though, which can be found around the front. And no, I'm not talking about the light up effect, which we're about to get to. I'm talking about the louvers. These can all be closed, so you can display the bat signal like this if you want to. I'm not sure as of yet which way I'm going to go, But I like having the option. Now I can customize this thing. If I want to have some of the panels open or some of them closed, totally doable. Whereas with the Hot Toys version of the bat signal, all of these louvers were fixed in position. I mean, what the hell? They've even sculpted in the warnings on this plate and the detail underneath this handle, which once again can't rotate. They have cleverly disguised the power button on this side as well. You probably already spotted it. It's this thing right here. You see, that's what I'm talking about, a proper warm tone LED. This is the correct vibe, not that stupid cool tone LED that Hot Toys went with. Yes, this can't project the symbol on your wall or ceiling, but I'm so freaking fine with that because I want my shit to be as accurate as possible. And if that means ditching a gimmick like projecting the logo, sign me up. Now, the way that the light works is it is quite inset, so it is diffused by this frosted acrylic panel. And you can't see the LED because they didn't have to do the gimmick. There's no mirrors, there's no light chamber. It's hidden behind that. It's just for looks only. They've added some airbrush shading around the edges of the acrylic panel, and there's this almost rain-like effect to make it look like rain has trickled down the surface of it, and dirt has collected there over time. You see, this is you versus the guy she tells you not to worry about. The Hot Toys bat signal does have its pros. I'm not going to lie, the USB power thing, I like it because you can plug it in and you don't have to worry about interchanging batteries. Everything else, I give to INART. The warm tone LED, the detail, and the platform that is completely absent from the Hot Toys one. The best way I can describe the bat signal on the right is that it's a cute little tabletop facsimile of a bat signal, whereas the INART one is properly accurate, it's more detailed, and I know I've already said it, but just one more time, it's got the correct vibe. What we are going to do now, though, is finally move on to the figures. Standing straight up and down in the light box, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. I thought we'd have them both rotating around in front of us together, as this is technically a two-pack after all. Starting off with Bruce first. Dude looks straight up real, and that's probably not the last time you'll hear me use that word to describe either of these two figures. But genuinely, it's the best way I can convey what he looks like in person. The proportions, tailoring, head sculpt, everything is razor sharp. Then we get to the Batman. I have the Hot Toys one, and I love the Hot Toys one. But this guy is something else entirely. That statement might be a hot take to some, and I get it. Sometimes the best figure is the one you already own. But my job is to compare them, and even though it is early on in the video, I can already tell you he's as close to a perfect translation of on-screen to figure as I've ever seen. There are so many teeny little intricate details that are either missing or just not done quite as well with the Hot Toys release. We are going to discuss both of these guys in much more detail, but now let's start with Bruce. Up close and personal, kicking things off with Bruce Wayne's head sculpt. Dude, I mean, there's no denying it, right? That's him. I can literally see the likeness from every angle. I think the expression they decided to go with the furrowed brow and the serious look probably helps with that too. And with a bit of a head tilt and his eyes looking up at us, not only does he look mean, but it perfectly suits the funeral scene that this outfit is based off. Then we get to the sculpt work and paint applications. They've sculpted the skin texture and the frown lines and the wrinkles, but also the stubble. I've not actually seen any other companies do this, but I don't know why, because it almost looks and feels like he has some razor burn, and it 100% adds to the realism. Then they've backed up all of the sculpted detail with some of the best skin tone and 5 o'clock shadow paint applications that I've ever seen. I mean, even the eyes look like teeny tiny little 1/6 scale glass eyes. And they've got a bit of redness at the bottom to show how tired Bruce is from all of that lack of sleep over the past 2 years. Now, the hair was pre-styled out of the box, and that did the trick because not a single strand was out of place. They've already applied some product to it, but if you want to use some Dolphy water wax, for example, that's what I use, you can just pop some on there to tame the flyaways. I am pretty nervous though about removing this back hair piece to access the moving eyes. Fingers crossed I don't mess anything up. The only thing to note really is that you can adjust the collar up and down if you want to make it look like his neck is a bit longer or a bit shorter. It's just down to personal preference, really. I like to have it sitting a little bit lower so you can see his Adam's apple and all of the detail on his neck. While this looks pretty scary, and I will have to do some futzing when I put this piece back down, it wasn't a massive deal to get here. All you have to do is wedge your finger underneath this bottom lip, pry up, and make sure you keep it in position because there are some hair strands over the top that connect to the back plate that you're probably not going to want to detach. This piece is held in place by two magnets. Now that we have it up, we do get access to the two joysticks for the moving eyes. And they've even gone so far as to add some little INART logos on the backs of the joysticks. You see, this is why I'm such a big advocate for moving eyes. Being able to switch up the eye position, and now it almost looks like we've tweaked the expression. He was serious before, but now that he's glaring up at us from underneath his fringe, he looks even more so. The eyes are infinitely customizable. You can have them looking in literally any direction. I cannot overstate how important tailoring is for nailing proportions. Most people think it's just the body, and the body's super important, of course, but if you don't get the material to a thickness that works in this scale, and it doesn't lay right, and it's baggy, and it's bunching, and there's too much or too little padding, that can all ruin the hard work that the body's putting in. Luckily, this is some of the finest tailoring I've ever seen in 1/6 scale. The shoulder pads are padded on both the outer and inner jackets, but not too much. It's got real pockets on the outer jacket, and it's made of this super lush feeling, almost velour material. It's hard to explain how it feels in hand. You'll just have to see what I mean when you get yours, I suppose. It is lined, and there are wires down the bottom. The suit jacket has a real button around the front, and normally I'm not a fan of that. In this instance, I get it. They didn't want press studs, they were going for realism, so a real 1/6 scale button, even though I normally hate them, works in this instance. The inner suit jacket is lined as well, but because it's pulled together around the front so tightly, there is some natural wrinkling by the way, you can't actually see it unless you unbutton it, which you can do because, once again, that's a real button. The tie is a proper tie. That knot is adjustable. You can move it up and down. It's sitting a little bit low for my liking, so I might tweak that after this. And then the shirt even has some real buttons on it. Usually 1/6 scale companies will glue those little white dots to the surface, but they've gone with real buttons, once again, I know I've said it too many times already, for maximum realism. So yeah, I've just found my favorite detail on the entire outfit. He's wearing the cufflinks that Thomas Wayne gave to Alfred, and then Alfred gave to him. What makes them even better is they're made of die cast. I have no idea how they managed to get these to look good at this scale, and etch that microscopic W into the surface. There's even some knurling around the edge. It is a proper functional cufflink, by the way. It's driven straight through the shirt cuff. You can adjust the shirt cuff if you want to bring it down so it's poking out from underneath the outer jacket, which I'll probably do because I do want to have that cufflink on display. A common misconception with INART wrist pegs is that it's the magnets that hold the hands on. That's actually not the case. The magnets are just there to help guide the hand onto the body, and they're there for some extra security. The things that do the actual heavy lifting are the ridges and that little notch down below. So when you have the hand on, give it an extra push and that will lock it in place nice and securely. The bottom of the suit jacket is wired, like I already said, but they're not using one of those thin, flimsy wires. This is really chonky. It's like a massive wired strip all the way around. So if you do want to have this thing billowing off in the wind, exposing the shiny lining, totally doable. Now the pants are just as well tailored as the rest of the outfit, and they're made of the same textured black fabric as the suit jacket. He's got some real working pockets, and a real belt with a metal belt buckle. They break at pretty much the perfect height just above his laces. He is wearing some real socks, and they've textured the legs underneath the pants, which isn't something most 1/6 scale companies do. Nor do they add a faux foot inside the shoe. Instead of just having the double ball peg go into the shoe and then the sock covering it, they've sculpted in the ankle so you can see a little bit of definition poking through the black socks. The shoes are brogues and they're very well sculpted. We've got all of the intricate detail work around the front, the laces, and some fully sculpted tread. While I think we can all agree that Bruce Wayne is a great figure in his own right, the real star of the show is Vengeance. Starting off with his cowled head sculpt, it is a two-piece design just like the Hot Toys one. But instead of using a magnetic neck connector, they've gone with a more traditional neck peg and rubbery gasket piece. You can adjust it up and down pose depending, but still I prefer the way Hot Toys attach their head sculpt to the body with a magnet because that means way more range of motion. Everything else I prefer with the INART one. The texture on the cowl, for lack of a better word, is intricate. It's just very fine. There's this leather grain texture, there's stitching, washes in the crevices, and if you push the mouth plate all the way up, his nose does sit under the nose of the cowl exactly as it should. So when you're installing it, do make sure you give it an extra push so that his nose isn't sticking out down below. Some people have complained about the ridge of the cowl extending past the inner neck piece, but from most angles, I mean, you can see it, right? It's not a massive issue at all. And because the Hot Toys cowl is also a two-piece design, it has the same thing going on. It sticks out a little bit past the inner neck piece. The ears are made of rubbery plastic, so no worries when it comes to breakage. And the mouth plates, we haven't even discussed the mouth plates yet. We have three options. This one is the neutral one, and detail is just as good as the Bruce Wayne head sculpt on the suited body. We've got that sculpted in almost bumpy razor burn effect, and that sells the realism. He does have moving eyes. To access the posts, you remove the head sculpt, then you can use your finger to adjust the eye positions. A lot of collectors have been modifying the collar on their Hot Toys of the Batman. With the INART figure, I don't think that's going to be necessary because there's already a gap between the outer collar and the neck. I remember sitting down and watching an interview with Robert Pattinson, and one of the interviewers asked him what was the biggest challenge when playing the Batman. And instead of saying the physicality or the stunts, he said something that stuck with me. It's that most of your face is covered by a cowl. So when you're trying to convey emotion, you don't have much to work with. You can only use your eyes and your mouth. So switching out the mouth plate for the mid-sentence one, by the way, the teeth are gorgeous. You can mix up the eye position, and now you can, like he did on set, use the eyes to convey emotion and sell a pose. One of the things that I would suggest doing is not relying on the upper neck joint too much. Mostly move the cowl from the bottom, and I think your poses will look all the better for it. You can use both, obviously, just don't rely on the top one too much, otherwise he comes across as though he's sassy Batman rather than badass Batman. This mouthplate, the angry one, is the most detailed of the three. You can see the top and bottom rows of teeth. They're subtly translucent, and they've managed to paint the individual lines between each of the teeth. I'm not sure as of yet which one I'm going to go with. Just weigh in down below. Do you prefer the neutral, mid-sentence, or angry mouthplate option? I thought I'd quickly show you how to install one of the rooted hair head sculpts that come packaged separately in these acrylic containers. Having this little liquid metal pool down below does feel quite premium. Now, to remove the head sculpt from the neck connector, you literally just swivel it, and then you can take it off. As you can see, the neck post down the bottom is keyed. Then you can bring back in Batman and remove the cowled neck piece. The magnet is very strong, so if the bottom ball joint neck connector comes out along with the neck, simply pop your fingernail in between the two pieces and you can pry this one out. Do make sure the key at the bottom of the head sculpt is facing the same way as the neck connector. After you've done that, the magnet does all the rest of the work. It guides the pin in, and it holds the head sculpt in place, which is significantly easier than the process you have to go through with the Hot Toys sculpt. I like that one, but I do not love what it put me through. Having to attach the collar piece to the sculpt, then trying to wedge it in while the hair is bumping into the collar, you're fighting it constantly. It took me at least half an hour to get that head sculpt connected. Where with this one, you saw it on camera. It took no time at all. This is much simpler. Now, the sculpt itself, I think, is the same one we just looked at with the Bruce Wayne and the suited body, except now his hair is a hell of a lot messier, still rooted, of course. He retains the moving eyes, and he's got the black eye makeup. They have pre-attached the collar to the neck, it's not removable. I mean, you could maybe use this Bruce Wayne head sculpt on the suited body, the neck connector is the same, and the collar piece will be hidden underneath the shirt collar. I don't think that would work quite as well as this, though. Benefit with this sculpt, I suppose, when it comes to the moving eyes, if you pry up the back plate and you mess up the hair, it's not a huge deal because the hair is so messy anyway. It'll just add to the look, if anything. It is, once again, held in place with magnets, and there are some INART logos on the back of the eye posts. They have sculpted and painted the hairline at the bottom. That's not visible. The rooted hair extends down long enough that that's completely covered. I feel like I might be overusing the side eye. Oh well, this is just how I'm going to have him displayed in my collection. The side eye totally works for me. Now, compared to the Hot Toys Bruce Wayne head sculpt, also with the messy hair look, I think it's a night and day difference. And no, it's not just the rooted hair. It's the lighter skin tone, it's the more detailed sculpt, it's the likeness, and it's the realism of the eyes. There's something about the Hot Toys one that looks good, but not quite as realistic as the INART one, in my opinion. If you prefer the Hot Toys sculpt and that's the one you have, that's awesome. I'm genuinely happy for you. At the end of the day, it's all down to personal preference. Traditionally, companies have struggled with capes in 1/6 scale, so I was worried with this being INART's first cape and all that it wasn't going to turn out great. It seems for no reason, because this is a really solid cape. It's not perfect, and we'll get to the reason why in just a second. It's nice and heavy, it's 2-ply, so it drapes well, but it's backed up by wires at the same time, in all of the spines along the bottom and along the edges. It drapes over the shoulders, thanks to those wires you can shape it, and it's attached with Velcro around the back and around the front. Instead of the Hot Toys one where it overlaps, this one looks like it's two individual pieces connected under the chest plate. It isn't, it's still one, but visually speaking, this is a lot more accurate. They have added some subtle weathering over the top that I didn't know was supposed to be there. I've looked at reference and it is. So the reason why it's not perfect is there is so much cape to work with. It took me a while to tame this. It's doable. Just be prepared that out of the box you are going to have to spend some time futzing. It's not the end of the world though, and thankfully the material they went with is not pleather. It does have that pleathery shine to it. I think it's more of a PU/vinyl. It's not a surface layer of detail that's been adhered to an underlayer, so there isn't going to be any peeling or cracking over time. Back around the front, the biggest difference between this guy and the Hot Toys one, for me, has to be the proportions. Some people said that the head is too small, the shoulders are too big, and the arms are too long. I don't see any of that. The wrists end just where the crotch is, which is accurate to human proportions. The shoulders being slightly bigger gives him that V taper coupled with the waist as it narrows down to the belt area, and the chest plate sticks out just enough that it gives him some added bulk. So I have no complaints with the proportions. As for the head being too small, I don't think that's a thing. It looks in scale to me. It's going to be up to you though. Weigh in down in the comments below. What do you think of the proportions? Now, the cape is supposed to sit over the shoulder pads. However, if you did want to adjust it because of the wire, you totally can. The shoulder pads are attached with Velcro, so you can dial in a pose, then remove them and pop them back on to help you facilitate getting him into that pose. The bicep covers are free floating, so you can adjust them. And the same thing can be said with the gauntlets. The outfit underneath the armor plates is full fabric. So you can leave him in a crazy pose, and you do not have to worry about damage to the outfit itself. There are certain sections where it's stretchy spandex, and you do have the little cords, and even underneath the cape, there is a significant amount of hidden detail. These teeny tiny little zippers might just be some of my favorite pieces on the suit. I know, I sound like a mad person going on about zips, right? Seriously though, they used to use those big bulky 1/6 scale zips back in the day, and this is a relatively recent innovation. Having these faux zippers on top of real tracks sells the realism and they're accurate to this scale. We do have the little cords that would cinch the outfit together, some ribbed detailing made of stretchy spandex underneath the armpits, and I mean, just look at all that texture on the back of the bicep guard and the little strap and the silver buckle. It's all painted beautifully. Because the outfit is as soft and thin as it is, he can get his arms completely flushed down by his sides, no problem whatsoever, which cannot have been easy to achieve with an outfit as busy as this is. The chest plate is made of rubbery plastic, and the texture does match the fabric pieces pretty well. It's subtly different, which it's supposed to be. There is some shading around the edges, some scratching, and some battle damage. The armor plates for his abs are incredibly crisp around the edges, and there's some weathering there too. Oh, and you absolutely can remove his tactical knife. There's some sculpt work behind it, and even some little scratches, which is a nice attention to detail. They've added some silver chipping to the back of the tactical knife, and it just attaches to the chest plate with a magnet. I have to walk back on my comments about the zippers being my favorite pieces on the suit, because these are. These pins, they're made of die-cast metal for some reason. Overkill? Yeah, probably, and most companies wouldn't have bothered with this because the complexity of milling these, then installing them into the gauntlet, wouldn't have been worth it. For INART, because they're trying to establish themselves as a premium brand, this, I feel, is necessary. It's the little touches like these pins being made out of die cast, and this buckle being metal, and this buckle being metal, and this piece being metal, and these being metal. All of those things combined, when you pick this guy up, the little pieces do add to the weight, but it's more so to do with the feel. When you're touching the figure and you have something cold come in contact with your finger, that to me screams premium. It's not going to do that for some people, but for me it does. The straps are made of rubbery plastic, and he does have the grappling guns on the inside of the gauntlets. You do get one for either side, extended and not, and they switch out with the entire track on 3 guiding pegs. The hand is specifically sculpted to fit around it, and when you wedge this spool section underneath his thumb, it just adds a bit of extra security. We've got some silver dry brushing and some dirt and grime over the top as well. You can install either the extended or non-extended grappling hooks. These things being made out of die cast, I do like, except for when you install this one. The pin is quite long, yet still there's a touch of sag because this is quite heavy. When you want to remove this piece from the gauntlet, it just comes off those 3 guiding pegs, then you can go ahead and install the collapsed version. Like I said, the pegs are there, push this in, it'll lock in place. The main body of the belt is rubbery plastic, and that's how they were able to sculpt in all of this texture. There's a lighter wash over the top which brings out that sculpt work. It is extremely thin, and it sits nice and flush to the body. Even though this buckle is a real die-cast buckle and it's functional, you'll have to use this to install the belt because out of the box he comes with it packaged separately. This is removable. These are his little sticky bombs. This pouch is fabric and you can open it. There's some foam inside. Whereas these ones aren't functional. They're just for show, and that's how they were able to get them accurately scaled versus the Hot Toys ones where they're larger and they're bulkier. This piece, real metal, which I know we've already discussed. Whereas these two, one is fabric and the other one is genuine leather. I've smelt it, and to me, that smells like real leather all day long. Around the back, there's another buckle and this strap. This was free floating out of the box. I simply threaded it through this elastic piece, and then tucked it under this pouch to lock it in position. Oh, and these pieces you can take out of the pouches if you want to. The sticky bomb gun also comes packaged separately. To install it, you undo the Velcro, slide it in underneath the elastic strap, and that will secure it. Most of these buckles are easy to work with. You may have to adjust the straps though if you find it a bit tight when you're trying to connect them. There is even some chipping over the top. The pants are quite thin, which means for posing, I'm expecting good things. We'll have to wait and see, of course, in the articulation segment. The pads, just like the ones for the abs, super crisp. The stitching is sharp as hell all the way down. There are some elastic straps so you can cinch the pants just underneath the knee pads. And then we get to the boots, which are a split cut boot design. There's this super fine leather grain texture, the wrinkling, the buckles, the eyelets are even painted. And we've got some tread on the underside with a wash in the details. I thought I'd quickly show you what he looks like without the cape on, just in case you decide to go this route in your collection with the uncowled head sculpt. Now that I'm seeing this, I'm tempted to display him like this, because without the cape on, you get a much clearer look at the proportions. And you get to see all this detail around the back. This panel, by the way, is functional this time, unlike with the Hot Toys version, that's just sculpted plastic. The reason they put a Velcro pad here, still with the X stitched in, is because when you connect the cape to it, it locks it down and in place, whereas with the Hot Toys figure, sometimes the cape does like to ride up. I was too curious not to try this. This is the Hot Toys body and the rooted hair INART head sculpt. If you take the magnetic neck connector out, it properly connects to the ball joint inside the neck area on the Hot Toys body. So it's not just sitting there, it's not held on with blue tack, it's properly connected and you get the same range of motion that you would with the Hot Toys sculpt. So if you wanted to display the Hot Toys one like this, technically it's doable. This, not so much. This is the INART cowled head sculpt, and because the neck is a bit longer than the Hot Toys one, and the collar is so much skinnier, something doesn't look right. So while I could potentially see myself using the rooted hair head sculpt with this body, the cowled one, it's a no from me. For a quick side-by-side comparison, INART Batman on the left, Hot Toys on the right. Don't worry, this is not the last you'll see of these two together. There is a zoomed-in comparison coming up in just a moment. What a difference a little bit longer in the oven can make. Seriously, I thought the Hot Toys one was near perfect when I reviewed it, but standing next to the INART release, I was so wrong. I call this the Best Buy effect. When you're at Best Buy browsing for a new TV, you spot a super pricey whiz-bang one on display alongside last year's flagship. In the store, side by side, the pricier one is the clear winner, of course. But when you take home the older model, there's nothing to compare it to. You don't have the pricier one alongside it. Its flaws are no longer as obvious. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, the INART one does trump the Hot Toys figure for me. Although, Hot Toys is not a fail. Bearing in mind budgets and availability, I'm sure that you can decide, now you've seen them both standing together, which is your personal favourite. Mine, well, it's INART, who does happen to be slightly shorter, just as a side note, not a huge deal for me. Next up, INART Bruce Wayne. I used to think that business suits were the easiest of all outfits to recreate in 1/6 scale. So much so that when I got a figure that had a business suit on to review, I just found it boring. While there is significantly more going on with the Batsuit, I think there is an argument to be made that getting the tailoring right for a business suit is almost a little bit more challenging, because you don't have armor plating and shoulder pads to rely on to sell the proportions. The business suit is a tricky beast to master in any scale. INART, you see, they're just flexing at this point with Bruce Wayne. Now, Bruce is slightly shorter than himself in full bat getup. I think that makes sense given the pointy-eared cowl and the thick-soled boots. I reckon this is the perfect pairing, and the scaling totally works for me. And lastly, 6 feet Lane Studios Riddler. I thought for a while that INART were going to make their own version of this guy. Unfortunately, that never happened. So for now at least, we're stuck with the third-party ones. Not that that's a bad thing, there are heaps to choose from. So you get to kit bash or just pick your favorite. In real life, Paul Dano is 5'11" versus Robert Pattinson's 6'1". So to me, with Batman being the taller of the two, the scaling works. For a much closer up comparison, on the left, still INART, and on the right, Hot Toys. There are quite a few very obvious differences, so we'll go through them first. Number one, the shape and size of the head with Hot Toys I think is way off. It's quite bulbous up top. The plasticky sheen on all of the rubbery pieces for Hot Toys makes it feel a bit cheaper. The shoulders are significantly narrower, and the colour of the suit is less green tinted than I think it should be. Everything else, maybe not as obvious. The INART figure is significantly heavier feeling in hand compared to Hot Toys. The detail on the chest plate is way sharper, same thing with the texture on the shoulder pads, completely absent from Hot Toys. The belt pouches are smaller and more accurate, and they managed to do away with the pleather that Hot Toys decided to include on the holster. You see, Hot Toys always likes to sneak in a bit of pleather somewhere, and they managed to do that with their Batman. Whereas with INART, no pleather, and, in my opinion, a more accurate release. Achieving this was way easier than with the Hot Toys Batman, which is insane, considering this is the Hot Toys bike, which was supposedly specifically designed for their Batman. Because the material on the INART suit is so much thinner, and there's no padding underneath that you have to fight, getting him into a bike riding pose was really straightforward. It's doable with the Hot Toys one, it's just that you're going to have to spend a lot longer fighting the suit and the padding to get it to look natural. I opted for the grappling gun holding hands, which are a pretty solid facsimile for bike brake pulling hands. Not perfect, but convincing enough. The cape is wired and the wires are sturdy, so you shouldn't have any issues posing it to make it look like it's billowing in the wind as he's riding the bike. Say you decided to pick up the INART all-in set like I did, and for display purposes you were wondering how big the bat signal is next to Batman and Bruce Wayne, this is what that looks like. It's sizable, not so much in height though. It's shorter than both figures, but it's a lot wider and deeper. So do make sure you have enough width and depth in your collection to accommodate it. Going over Batman's articulation, starting off with his head sculpt. It's on an articulated neck with a ball joint at the bottom, and there's a double ball peg up underneath the sculpt itself. Combined, looking forward to there, looking up to there, more than enough range for a Hot Toys Batcycle riding pose. Swivel and pivot side to side. His arms will go up to there, going forward and back. There's a butterfly joint at the shoulder that hinges up and down. Swivel at the bicep, double bend at the elbow going pretty much the full way, and then for the wrist peg, it's a hinge and swivel. His torso crunches forward to there, more than I was expecting honestly, going back to there, swivel and pivot side to side. His legs will go forward to there, much further than the Hot Toys Batman, going out to there, swivel at the upper thigh. Ratcheted double bend at the knee going past 90, and then a split cut boot design with a double ball peg for the ankles. Good for forward and back, swivel, as well as ankle tilt. Bruce Wayne also has a ball joint at the base of his neck, but he doesn't have the double ball peg, seeing as though the head sculpt and the neck are a single piece design. Looking forward to there, looking up to there, swivel and pivot side to side. His arms will go up to there, going forward and back, butterfly joint at the shoulder that hinges up and down. Swivel at the bicep, double bend at the elbow going past 90. When you do bend it this far, just make sure you're pulling on the cuff of the shirt so that you're covering the wrist peg. Speaking of the wrist peg, it's a hinge and swivel. He is wearing multiple layers, and out of the box his suit jacket is done up, but I've undone it just so that we can have a little bit more range of motion. Crunching forward to there, going back to there, swivel and pivot side to side. His legs will go forward to there, going out to there, swivel at the upper thigh. Ratcheted double bend at the knee going past 90, and lastly for the ankles a double ball peg. Good for forward and back, swivel, as well as ankle tilt. Wrapping up on the INART, the Batman All-In pack that comes with Bruce Wayne, Batman, and the Bat Signal. What a set. Honestly, this is pure 1/6 scale indulgence right here. I don't think it gets any better than this. Let's start off with the light. It's huge, it adds a ton of bat presence to The Batman display, and it adds heaps of ambience with its warm tone LED. Some folks may prefer the USB-C power of the Hot Toys one, and the smaller footprint, but for me, I love the larger format. And the single-cell batteries mean that they will likely die long before you ever burn out the LED. USB-C means, yes, you can have it powered on all the time, but don't do that. LEDs do not last forever. Okay, on to Bruce Wayne. He's one suave-looking figure. The plush coat, the tailoring on the business suit, the cufflinks. There's pretty much nothing to complain about here. The only thing I can think of is that the magnets are in his heels, which means he may be a bit tricky to get standing at first. Not impossible, you'll just have to be precise. At least they've taken into account my suggestion with the moving magnets in the bases. Not a perfect solution in practice, but I'm glad they're taking on feedback and trying new things. It is an improvement over the original design with the non-moving magnet bases. I think we can all agree on that. Now for the main event, the Batman himself. He is genuinely perfect. For me. I'm going to piss a lot of people off by saying that, but it's true. I have to be honest in my reviews, and I'm calling it how I see it. The outfit is so finely detailed, there is so much unnecessary diecast here, and the sculpts are so good that I don't feel the need to complain about anything. As The Batman fan, I am over the moon right now. And we haven't even touched on the rooted hair yet. The sculpted hair sculpts, they're great. No denying it, if you get them, I reckon you're going to be perfectly satisfied. I think it's rooted or bust. Rooted hair is one of INART's specialties. And this figure just hammers that point home even further. His hair is much shorter than Gandalf, Pennywise, and Joker, so getting it to look correct at this scale cannot have been easy. I'm just glad that the hairstyles come pre-styled out of the packaging. I didn't have to do any futzing really, I popped them on the body, and away I went. So where does that leave Hot Toys? I adored that figure when I reviewed it, and part of me still does. The INART release is just superior, in my opinion, at every level. But let me put this out in the ether. Should he not be? It's positioned as a more premium product, right? It's more expensive, it's sold as a huge all-in set. If it wasn't better, then we'd have a massive problem on our hands. I don't think it should come as a surprise. If you've sat through the entire review, I'm sure you'll have picked up at least some details that stood out as being sharper or more accurate with INART. Yes, Hot Toys has the taser fingers and the wingsuit. I honestly don't miss them at all. At the end of this, I think the perfect Robert Pattinson display is a mix of INART's all-in set with the Hot Toys Batcycle. And that's exactly what I'm going to do in my collection. Now, if you are heading down to the description, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button, if you like the sound of seeing your name in the end credits of my reviews. Like, comment, and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video. So Bruce does come with 4 protest sold boots.